I hear the magic button. Right. Welcome to Transmission64, Commodore 64 fans around the world. This is Warren Pilkington, aka Waz of Padua. And with me, we have Mason of the transfer team, who's going to divulge about all things transfer and archival and the role that the transfer team has currently in the Commodore 64 scene. So, for the benefit of the viewers at home, Mason, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mason. I'm, as you said, in the transfer team, and I have been active in the C64 scene since the 80s. And I had a break, of course, in the 90s, as many did, and came back in the end of the 90s and started to preserve a bit, doing a little bit of helping a little bit of seniors with cracking and explaining what to do and everything. Special kind is that I actually in the 80s did the computer radio programs. And if you sometimes see videos telling, well, there was radio programs transmitting programs over FM, we did that too. And we actually also played the SID songs in the 80s.
So basically, when you were younger, how did you get involved with the C64 scene? So where was your kind of start story? You know, when did you first get your Commodore 64? How did you progress from there?
I actually get my Commodore C64 when I was 13. My family could see I have a big interest in computing, and one of my other big interests is cooking. And at that time, we were talking about if I should perform and be a better chef, or I should go with the IT way. And because the people who was working in the restaurant business was very violent and yelling and everything, we were talking about it was better I went to the IT way. So I got my computer at that time, the C64, and a tape deck at that time. And a year later, I got a disk drive. And one day, one of my friends, actually one of the guys that did Moonsoft with, was asking me if I wanted to go to visit a friend. And that was the Goonies, who was very active on C64 and also very active on Amiga. And I was talking to the Goonies many years later because he started to be active on Facebook and he started to do the radio console market and everything. And I was saying, well, I remember we visited you. I remember the moving vans outside your house, the wine red ones. And he was like, then you have been there. I was sure, and I could tell him where it was. I could remember it. And we actually visited him, and he was sitting to crack a game, and I was like, that sounds interesting. And I started to play a little bit with it, and when I got the more interest for it, I wasn't the guy who wanted to do the speed cracking and the first releases. I want to do the quality and more try to find out how it worked and do some special stuff for it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I think, you know, for me, sort of one of my memories is basically when I had a Commodore 64 was getting my first action replay cartridge. And obviously that opened up a lot of things because you could do have a machine code monitor, you could like sort of delve into the code a bit more. So, and that was how I eventually got sort of doing tips and pokes, because I could like work my way around a monitor a little bit and learn from it, as we all do. We all learn, right?
Yeah.
So
I also had my boss, because I also work with radio and have done that for over 40 years. This is a little bit different because I was 10 when I was starting. And at some point, I was starting to be on a radio station, and the boss there was having a company next to it, and actually was the guy who did the Danjoy joystick, which is a Danish joystick. People can find it on the internet if they want to see it. And if Andreas from C64 is watching it, I know he loves the joystick because he thinks it have an ugly design.
I know Andreas well. I am sure he will approve.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it several times. He said, how did he do that design? So I learned a lot from him, and he was in the week clubs and everything. So I learned really a lot of things from him, not the cracking part, but more the hardware and everything.
So how did that sort of love of the coding and love of machine code, how did that then turn into becoming like someone who would be interested in preservation efforts? Was that stemming from your work on radio and your interest there, or was it more just learning, like you say before, you were saying about qualities of coding and cracking, whether that was more your ilk because you felt that the quality needed to be there as well?
Yeah, it's also the quality, but I was working at a library at that time, and at the library they started to talk about digital preservation, and starting to talk about how could we preserve old radio shows and TV shows and everything. And I actually bumped into a meeting because they were sitting at our IT room and used the meeting table there. And I was going to the fridge that was behind because I need to get a Coke. And then I went to the big whiteboard and saw the calculation and said, oh, it did it wrong. You need to add 3 times because there was one track for one station, one track for the second, and another track for the third, and the clock. So we actually changed it there, and I started to get more and more interesting in it. And I saw things got started on internet, and people started to preserve the C64 stuff. Sadly, most of it was local imports from different places. Still, there was some original stuff, but I had the point that I think it could be great to preserve the story.
Yeah,
and that's how it started. And of course, I knew a lot of friends, and I started to ask them, oh, do you still have your discs? Can I borrow them and transfer them? And I did. We used the star command in the beginning, and left that, and I will tell about the transferring tools a little bit later. But we actually used the star commander.
Absolutely, Star Commander. I had that with an old legacy machine. I transferred discs. I remember backing up the for my own use, the Commodore 128 only version of Kickstart, because I didn't have a Commodore 128, but I thought it needed backing up. And I think my disk backup might even be in game base, but small story. So moving on to the transfer team, what is the main goal of the transfer team group?
The main goal for the transfer team is to transfer disk for people. So we actually, sometimes we of course buy something, but often we borrow it. And from owners, seniors, sometimes it stuff they bought with other computers and everything. And for us, the question is how to get it transferred in the most correct way. So we get less errors, or get it transferred correctly if it needs a nibble transfer or something different, because we need to make sure it's done correctly. Then there's the part about putting it online. And sometimes we get permission, because it's always the owner who decides what's going to happen with the transfer disks. So if they're private disks, we don't give them away. Sometimes we get permission to take the releases, official releases from the disks, and put them on CSDB. But on other occasions, we say, well, it's the owner who decides it. Other people say, well, you have transferred them, you can put them online on the movers thread on CSDB. And people usually do that, but they have to do it because we are only the practical people who doing the transfer.
Yeah, you're the ones that are basically facilitating that work and carrying out that work for somebody. And ultimately, like you say, if it's their kind of work, then you want to kind of respect that regardless. So moving to that, how does that fit into the sort of broader C64 and demo scene communities in terms of the fact that, you know, if you are given permission by the requester to archive and publish, how will that then fit into the scene as a whole?
It actually fits very well, because if you're going to make them public, the owner often put them on CSDB in the movers thread. Otherwise, usually CBA starts to put them online on CSDB, being very active. And that happens often because many of those people who have that disk is actually happy to get their story preserved and get their stuff online.
Yeah, excellent.
And I had people I met at X party. I had a guy coming to me and said, well, I have 20 disks here. It's my coding disks. I have one I really want to get to work. So no problem. We're going to have a look at it. Came back to me in 30 minutes and I will have a look. And then he came back after 30 minutes and I said, well, here's all 20 disks. I have one disk with one error, and that's an empty track. So all your disks is preserved. Yeah, but I tried some years ago. It was full of errors. So I said, yeah, but we did it, and that's the knowledge we got for transferring, because we also get a lot of knowledge for transferring the disks using the correct tools, also how to clean them and make sure what we are going to do with the disks. And after we started using Star Commander, we started to use the replay to transfer the disks, and later on we moved on to use Luigi's ISC host, because that's actually a tool he did the hardware, and he started to ask us, how do we want to get the tool made?
Yeah.
And he made a lot of features for us. A lot of features was added because we had the requests. And one of the simple things is that if we have a totally unreadable disk, we also have a function to say we take out the directory track, we take the sys lines so we can see what's on the disk. Then we can decide, do we need to work hard on it? Because if we can see it's 4 demos that's released on, let's say, a Horizon party, there's a big chance you can find them on many of collections. But sometimes you also sit with disks that only had this one. And then we have to open the disk and try to wash it and clean it and everything.
Tough job, that one. So obviously, apart from your good self, and obviously we've mentioned Andreas Wallström of C64.com, obviously transferring disks and archiving disks is a quite large task overall. So are there multiple members of the transfer team? And maybe just give us an insight into each of the members and their roles.
Yep. Actually, we have say many members. CBA and Acid Child and MDZ and me is actually, say, the 4 who works a lot of it. Andreas is also doing a big part of the job. Kavi is doing the big part of the job. Sometimes he helps us. We have Maestro in the UK helping us if it's needed. We have a little problem getting discs out of UK. So he actually
I get
that.
I get it the other way when I'm trying to get stuff from Europe into the UK. It's a lot trickier now. So yeah, I completely empathise on that one.
So we have a lot of people helping us, and we also have other people who's not, say, part of the team, but actually have the interest in the hardware or in the discs or something like that. If it's special written or something like that, we have people like Microtop who's usually goes with us at X and say, this is interesting. He starts to study it. So
yeah,
I
was going to say, so I mean, basically, in terms of a number of the members, and obviously you've got enough hardware between you in terms of the what's to be used for transferring. You mentioned some of the stuff by Luigi. I mean, take it this is Luigi Di Freya, right? Yeah. So I've actually got myself. One of his tape transfer utilities is the DC2N. I've got the version 4, which for me as a Commodore 16 and +4 owner as well, that transfers some of the really tricky half-wave tapes for the C16 and +4 that are really hard to do. And Luigi's is one of only two pieces of hardware I know that can do it. So as I've got quite an extensive collection of originals, I can vouch for his hardware being really good. So you've mentioned his hardware. Are there any other pieces of hardware and software that is really useful for you as a team to help transfer that media over?
Yeah, we're using the DC2N also for the tapes, but for the discs, we always use Luigi's IC host and the software for it. We have he made a version who can do the nibble transfers, so we can get nib files and G64 files out of it. Otherwise, we have used I can't remember the tool for it because it's usually not me who's doing those nibble transfers. I'm actually the guy because I have the advantage that since I have been looking at a lot of the games, I can say this one I know have to be special transferred, and then MDZ is actually doing a great job. He's the guy who, if you have the arrow discs, he do a lot of work to get them to work. And then he did the C64 search tool that you can find on CSDB, and we use it to import the discs and search for the missing lists. We have a missing list on the Digital Dungeon, where you can see what's missing of cracks, demos, Macs, and tools and everything, to make sure if we see there's a missing release, we can try to work hard on it to get it preserved so we don't miss it. And sometimes we, if it's discs that is bought, we usually ask the owner who bought them if we could get those 2 or 3 discs, because the guy who owned it doesn't have a history for them. So we keep them and try to work hard on them later on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's mostly the tools we're using today, because we have the functionality in the IC host. We have the arrow retransfer. This doesn't try to transfer the whole disk, because if the disk is bad and it starts to lose the top cover of it, then we can't read it anymore. So we have to work on the special track that's bad, or the 2 tracks that's bad. So that's actually how we do it. And I know there's a lot of other tools people can use, and just have to say the most important thing is that you have the arrow block, because if you don't have the arrow block, we can't make sure it works. And we can't,
without that, you need, like you say, you need that accuracy, and having the error block in place is kind of essential, right?
Yeah. Also because we didn't have an arrow block on the C64, on the disc, on the tapes. So we just have to make sure if they work. But the more copies we get, we can make sure that we have the right one. And second part is that we get the discs transferred, and if we know it's bad, we know the existence of it and can put it on the missing lists.
And also, as well, I suppose, as well, that can be documented so that if you've tried a transfer before and you know that there may be bad discs, bad sectors, etc., that's also noted, so that if you are on the lookout for it, you know there's been a transfer attempted. So in terms of the challenges that are faced when you were transferring discs or tapes or cartridges, are there any particular challenges that make the transfer trickier?
Actually, if the discs have been wet over the time, so they have been stored in a wet place, you get dried stuff on the discs, and you have to clean them. Dirt is not is mostly you can clean. You have some discs that's very, very dirty, and I usually say that in the Netherlands you can use the Nether discs, and that those discs are really bad. Not that back when, but because they start to lose part of the material. So we have to sometimes really work hard to get them to work.
Is this a little bit like some of the ST and Amiga 3.5-inch discs, where they suffer from disc rot, where the track sort of fades away from some of the discs?
Yeah, we don't see that often. We see, of course, we can see it if it's a really old, but we really haven't seen it on the C64 discs. And I got explained it because on the Amiga discs and on the ITA ST disc, the tracks is stored closer, and the way the disc is built, it can rot even more. But if it's kept dry and it's kept in a good condition, I usually say we can get this transferred.
Excellent.
And then you can say, is it needed to transfer the discs? Because I often get to say, oh, you have everything. I don't have anything special. And I have to say, if we transfer, let's say 200 discs, you find a lot of things on the discs that isn't everywhere. I have a funny part of it that I say, if I transfer some Danish discs, like auction discs are bought on the used pages. We don't use eBay here, we use DBA, and there's some other stuff. But if you get those, I usually say that there's a big chance that when you see those, you find a carry release that I haven't seen before. So when people say, I don't have anything special on the discs, it's not true. You usually find something on the discs.
Everything is special. It's just like you say, you have to find it. And that can sometimes be particularly tricky. If you've got a minefield of like say 30 or 40 discs to wade through and find that one missing piece, that can obviously be time consuming. So in terms, you've mentioned about the accuracy and integrity of those transfers, which is absolutely important. I completely agree. So in terms of actually preserving that software and data, how important do you and the team see that as a task that you do?
It's very important because we need to get the story preserved. That's a big story. I usually say there's of course a big story for the crackers, all the cracks and all the different intros, but there's also a big story for the demos and the Macs and the tools. And if you look at some of the people who did the stuff, actually did some special stuff later on in their work days now, because I think we can say everyone learned something from their days in the C64 scene. I know some people who left it totally and don't work with computers and anything, but I have other people who worked with it and actually did special things for the nowadays jobs. So I think we learned everything from that period, because we just have to sit down and try. There wasn't anywhere we could go look and say, how do we do it? How can we do it? We have to learn it ourselves. Well, we could get some disc and get inspired and look how others did it, but we didn't get everything. So we had to try and see how it could work. And I think we used a lot of that learning in our nowadays jobs, because we used to that say, it's not mentioned any there. We have to find a solution. And I hear that from a lot of the old sceners. So they're actually happy because they did something special for the days in the scene, and they want to keep it preserved. So it's very important to get it done. And for others, it's also important because many people haven't seen everything. I haven't seen everything. And it's fun to sit down and watch some old demos from the 80s, and you sit and say, hey, I have seen that guy. He did my favorite game on PC in the 90s. I didn't knew he did a demo, or he did some graphics and everything. So everything gets some use out of it, because you get a history preserved. And you can see that they started to talk about preserving it around in Europe, different countries, to make sure that the subculture is kept. So they actually started looking at it everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Certainly, it's snapshot of what someone was doing at the time. If they were moving on to greater things and they actually were developing at the time and they were learning their coding skills or whatever, it's obviously quite important that, like you say, the history is preserved. So if you have, say, a lot of discs or cassettes that you have at once, is there any particular method that you would have to try and prioritize anything, or is it just as it comes in, you process it and you do the transfers that you need?
We transfer everything. We have a rule saying we transfer everything, and we have to do it because we don't have to check some. So we can say, well, I have seen this demo on a disk, but the fourth file is bad, but we didn't check it because we just know it was there. So we have to transfer everything, and we usually do it as we get it in, but sometimes we also get some discs that we know we have for some limited period. Like we know we have some discs at our places now that we have to return, we bought at X. So we know at next X, we have to make sure they're done. Of course they're done, but we have to make sure that we do the ones first that we need to return. So if I get some discs and I don't have to return them, I can put them in the behind and say, well, I have the other discs first. But we usually try to get everything done as fast as possible.
Excellent. So in terms of the work that you do and the team does, what collaboration do you have with, say, other preservation groups or other archivals that are happening? Is there generally a cooperative scene in that regard?
I won't say that's a scene, but I think we know each other. like I know the Demosu guys who's doing a lot of work for the Amiga PC and to preserve the demos to be on the Demosu. But we going to know each other, and when we know each other and we start to talk, you can say it's maybe not a scene, but it's a big community, and the community is actually growing, and the interest is growing because people can see it gets important, and we get inspired from each other. Many people have been inspired that we usually bring our equipment to X to transfer disks. And if you see me at X at one time, you'll see I'm sitting most of the time transferring disks. I have some breaks and get some food and relax and something like that. But also the people who's there, they have to talk to me, know they have to go sit at my place. They know I'm busy.
Fair enough. I mean, obviously, a lot of that work that you do is benefiting generally the demo scene and the scene in general in terms of the archival work. So in all the years you've been doing some discs transfers, has there been really any like notable discoveries or really rare finds that you've managed to find during the transfer process that is a particularly good story to tell?
I have many good stories to tell. One of the latest we actually had was there's a demo group called Alpha, and those demos are really, really, really hard to find. They're never shown off discs, and that was broken on CSDB. And I got 3 big gray boxes on disc from a good old scene friend, and he said, "That's discs I got when I bought the computers and everything, and I have the discs I need, so you can have them and transfer them." And we found the discs. And we found the 2 of the alpha releasing that was missing. So we always find interesting stuff. I also find a lot of Akari stuff. I never knew the Danish Akari division imported so much stuff. I have seen some of it, but I had never seen that did so much. And I was so lucky. I have also always been a good friend to Derbyshire Ram until he died. And I had contact with Derbyshire Ram in the 80s and in the 90s, and he was actually really good to transfer some discs for me before he died. And he took the UK groups and transferred those releases because we knew there wasn't everywhere. And I found stuff from S Express. This wasn't one of the groups. I actually did a lot, but didn't get spread a lot. The British Excess was a good example. NATO releases, I found document tracking service releases and everything. And also we find some demos from the UK that he also got on the discs. Luckily, they did a project after he died to transfer all the discs. And I know the people did a huge job because there was plenty of discs to do. And also was put online on CSDB so people can enjoy them and try to sort them. And besides what I found and what was special for me, I know that the demo people also found a lot of English demos. I had friends who actually, when I talked to them, say, "Well, I don't think you can find much of my stuff because it's not well spread." And one day it pops up, I send a release to a friend. I say, "Well, was this the release you were missing?" "Yeah, no one has it." "Well, you have it now because it was on the discs." And that's actually like you found the stuff and say, "Well, that's cool. We found a demo from this group on that group, or we found a crack from a carrier legend or success or illusion or anything else." But what actually makes it better is when you talk to people and they say, "Oh, you find this release. I have been searching for it for years." And I have some special ones. I don't have them on the missing list because I only got told about them, but I never got them. Confirmed. And I was speaking to Westbam, who was in Legend, and he passed away many years ago. And I actually wrote to him 1.5 weeks before he passed away, because we were talking about the Legend releases. He wanted to find them all, and he also did the Legend review page that the Jask had preserved and keeps online today. And I was talking to him and said, "Oh, you have to find the Myth cartridge crack we did for Legend. I haven't found it yet, and I still hope I found it because I knew it had something special for him." And that's what counts for me, is that the people who gets happy because we found some of their stories and some of their releases and say, "I remember this release. This was special for me." And I have it the same way for my own releases. I have to say, "Well, I'm happy to see this release." So if I found some of my own, I don't have all my own stuff, sadly. I did over the years. But if I found some of it, I always get happy to see it again. And like we missed Street Tough. He passed away not a long time ago, and I was writing to Street Tough and said, "Hey, I found one of your cracks for Miracle." He was like, "Where did you find it?" Because he didn't have it, and he was very happy we found it.
I mean, I think that touches on something quite, really collaborative as well. The fact that, like you say, the work that you do is appreciated, and there's a lot of happy people that you've made happy because you've found something that's really old and archived that, like you say, they may have lost. Many people here in the UK were aware of the work that Derbyshire Ram was doing, for example, and obviously he sadly missed. That goes without saying. But in terms of anything that was deemed like previously lost, in terms of any lost demos or games, is there a particular story, for example, a lost game that somebody might have lost where you've managed to find it and archive it? That's a really interesting story to tell.
Let me think, because there have been many stories where I have transferred the games that I missed or demos I missed. You could say, well, to do one of the more famous ones, you have Demo of the Year 1988. And we actually started the transfer team in 2006, I think, officially, but MDZ and me was already starting before. And then I saw the disc and he said he couldn't get it to work. I said, "Well, I know it had to be nibbled, because if they used a fast loader, the protected fast loaders, you used to nibble it." And because I had the knowledge, we actually got it preserved so it worked. We also have one you have seen a lot when you were younger, Thomas the Tank Engine, if you remember the train.
Absolutely, it was huge in the UK, and obviously there was a number of games based on Thomas the Tank Engine as well. So, yeah, I can relate.
And you were one of the guys, because in Denmark we have the Danish voices, but you had Ringo Starr to be the train. Yeah. And that game, you have the official game where you drive the train, but there's also the fun with words. And that game, I have never seen a crack of. And I spoke to the Goonies. We have a friend who's actually have plenty of discs in his basement. And he had planned to sell them, and I was so lucky we got permission to borrow them. So I think I got 12 moving boxes or something like that. And suddenly it showed up. I've never seen it. And I know it's not a big game, but it's just like, say, we found the game. Now we know for sure it was cracked. And I still have the theory that everything got cracked. But I know for the demos, we also found a lot of demos for people. I'm not so strong in the demos, I have to admit. And also people knows me at parties, is actually when people say, "Oh, is that the guy who did this and this?" And I have to, yeah, now I know him. But I'm not so strong in it because I haven't been so much a demo guy. I have seen some stuff, and mostly I still have a part of my discs. I don't have them all, but I still have my demo box, and most of the demo discs there is for my friends. And if you want to talk about a special thing I have there, is I have the first demo. I can't remember if it was the Ice Cream Castle. I think it was numbered. I have one of the Crest discs numbered with a lower number I got from Crest.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. because one of my friends was in Crest at that time. So he got me a special copy.
Nice one. I mean, certainly, it was always a bit of an occasion in the early days of the demo scene in the late 80s, early 90s when Crest released something even then. So, I can pretty much vouch for where there were some public domain libraries that managed to get some of the disc swapped and distributed within the UK. So you could see quite a few of the demos back then, and it was always, this is sorcery, this is witchcraft. How did they do this? So, archiving some of the older stuff, particularly that like you say, was limited in distribution or limited in swapping, I think is really important that those are salvaged. So in terms of when you transfer some of this stuff, are there any kind of copyright and distribution issues that you come across, and how do you navigate those?
We don't have to care about those because we transfer the discs. We don't put them online. We take the private collection, transfer them. If they're protected, we nibble them, and most of them works. We do it to make sure that people have the story preserved, and we make sure it works even if it's protected. And of course, there could be some people who don't want it online and don't want to spread and everything. But again, it's the owner who have to take care of that.
Yeah, and I think this is what you were saying about the fact that you were balancing the respect for those people who supplied the discs, and it may be their own work that has been supplied to you. And obviously, if you're doing the job and archiving it, and you're respecting their wishes, what you find is, and I certainly found this from the days of when I would dig up musicians' work discs when I used to do some stuff for HVSC, that if you respected their work, they were more likely to recommend to their friends to say, "Oh, speak to these guys, they're really good, they'll look after you," and you build up a level of trust. I think that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very important because we don't want to spread personal stuff. It's not our job. Our job is to make sure it's preserved, and we have the possibility to make an agreement and say, if we found some stuff, we say, not internal stuff, but official releases, that the owner says, well, you can use them, the final releases, put them on CSDB. But it had to be that trust, because we can't transfer discs for a special guy and spread them to everyone, because there can't be personal stuff on them. There can't be stuff that don't want to be published, and that we have to respect it.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And I think, what I always find is that when you do that and you gain the respect and trust of people, that they're more likely to sort of spread the word and say to a friend, "Oh, speak to these guys," and that obviously then helps you, because then you may find there's more stuff that you can actually retrieve and distribute. So in terms of any upcoming sort of recent projects or goals, obviously it's an ongoing thing to archive and transfer, but is there any kind of special project in the pipeline that is forthcoming, or is it just an ongoing process?
It's an ongoing process, but it's also a side project I wanted to finish. I haven't had time to do the C64 Heaven project. And that's actually because I want to put the stories behind it. You can say you have some sites who like Lemon64, who's doing a great job. Let me say, if you look at the page, remember to donate a small amount of money to the Rondo website. Like, do that for CSDB also, because they do it for free and we have to support them. But and they do the story about the games and reviews and how was it in the max and how was it reviewed and everything. I want to do it, like, tell the story from the scene angel, and say, well, I want to tell a little bit about the stories, tell a little, so of course, a small story about the game, but also I know some of the stories, and I got told some of the stories from the game when it was released, and people did this review, or this was stolen on PCW show and everything. And I have got told many stories. I know them from the days in the scene and everything. So for me, it's very important that that project I really want to finish. And people say, why don't you finish it? And that's actually because we are using so much time transferring disks. We have transferred so many disks for people to make sure it gets preserved. Also because we can't say when the disk stops working. Like you said, the disk on Amiga and Atari ST rots. We never know if they rot. The C64 disks. They look good now, and we can find disks that's 40 years old and they still look good if they're kept dry and clean, but we never know how long they will last. We have a good chance because the way the tracks are stored makes it good, and we know from the tape backup world that it's a stable media. If you remember the 80s CDs just start to crack now, and people who did backup on CDs actually have to find other sources because we can't be sure it works in 20 years. And that's the same for us. We don't know when the disks are done. We can say, well, 20 years and it works. 5 years, 10 years, we don't know how long they will last.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for us, we have to do it. A little bit special project. It's not like a project that will finish up to anything. But when you sit and transfer also those disks and see what comes online and everything, it's fun to see how things spread all over the world. So you can see if you get them from Germany, it's of course many German groups, but it's like there was a little bit the middle. So they got from Denmark and they got from the Netherlands and from Switzerland and from Austria and everything. And you can then follow the tasks around and say who had the contacts and where does this group's demos go? How did it get spread? And that's actually funny to follow.
Yeah, it's quite like you say, it's almost like follow the trail of discs. So obviously in the mid-80s, we had CompuNet here in the UK, where you had a dial-up modem, you'd access the CompuNet that way, you'd download your demos from there and transfer them to discs. And obviously people in Europe got access to it, and obviously that's how some of the people like Maniacs and Noise got to know some of the UK guys, because they were uploading stuff to there and, you know, sharing discs, etc. So there's always been a collaborative effort. So I think certainly for me, it's in that side of it's fascinating to sort of see, you know, here's somebody releasing a demo, they've uploaded it to here or they've transferred it to here. Where did it go from there? How did that get spread? So I certainly think that's fascinating. I would agree on that one.
It's really fascinating to see. And sometimes I sit and say, well, how did it end here? And I was actually found one of my own cracks founded on Hungary discs. And I said, how did it end here? I never seen my own releases on Hungarian discs. But when you go to do this, you get a lot of stories told over the time, and people tell how they got it or how they spread it. And I have a good friend, Henrik, who's actually I was have contact to in the 80s, and we got contact with each other again because we have met to some meetings, and we have met at the video console market and everything. And we actually started to talk a little bit about those old days and how it worked. And sometimes we try to look back on the groups we had, and as many people know, I was one of the guys who was with X-Ray as Crossfire, and he wasn't that popular all the time and changed the handle very often. So we usually have, when we talk about something, we say, well, it's the unofficial handle or it's the official handle, we usually point out.
Yeah, exactly. But it's those little nuances that really make, you know, that history, like, you know, preservable and actually enjoyable, isn't it? So if, say, there are people out there who want to get involved or want to support the efforts that you do, how can they get involved?
Actually, the best is if they want to help transferring and they have some disks to transfer, make sure to do it with an hour block. Make sure we get a chance to look at them, because one thing is that we transfer them, but we also looked through the discs and say, this one is rare, this one is missing, or this one we need to make sure is working, so we can actually do a special transfer if it's needed, or we need to get it fixed if it's broken. Otherwise, if you just have the disk, make sure let us transfer the discs, because I know people say I can do it myself, and that's fine. But then you get to disk number 52 or first box of 8 boxes, they're starting to look and say, I don't think it was a good idea I started. And it takes time. And you have to do it, and sometimes you have to do it in small breaks, and sometimes you do a huge job. I had 3 weeks where I was working every evening because we had to finish a lot of stuff we had to return for X. And it was the first party after Corona. And we have got some discs borrowed, and we actually got some discs in the middle under the Corona, and we couldn't get them back before X. So we were working hard because I was transferring, MDZ was fixing, and I was checking them at some of the other was helping checking that things was working, and we were sure we get everything was done. And sometimes we are not allowed to check them. We just have to transfer them. Again, it's up to the owner. So if we have our discs, we can try to fix them, and we can send them to the owner and see if we want to get anything fixed, and we will do that.
Excellent. So in terms of the sort of the here and now is obviously you're still all very busy transferring discs and tapes and archiving them, which is a great job, and I think everyone on the scene appreciates it. And if they don't, they should. That's my view. But in terms of the future of preservation and the future of the demo scene aligned to that preservation, obviously you mentioned X as a place where you can obviously get together with people in the scene and archive stuff, and I take it you're going to be at X 2026 and be there in all the glory with the team. So if you are going to X, folks, look out for Mason, he will be there. But in terms of the future, how do you see that future of preservation on the 64?
I would say there's 3 parts of preservation. There's also all the new releases that we have to remember to get preserved. And one of the parts is that we preserve the release, but sometimes people is doing graphic and work stages, and if they link it to another web page because they couldn't store it at CSTB or some other places, we need to make sure it's kept, because it's fine we do it now, but we also have to admit that some of the older singers who came back is old. So we can end up that they pass away, we can end up the page they started on gets offline and everything. So we have to preserve the new stuff also. Then we have, you say the old stuff. You can get the auction discs, or what I usually call auction disc, is that people buy a computer and buy it with some discs, and they don't know where they came from. And it can be a lucky shot. You can get some where people have bought it from someone who's been selling discs for years. You can get it. You can get such discs that's old scene discs. I've seen scene discs being sold that the guy who bought them never knew the guy was Cena, or he bought them from another guy who bought it from the Cena, and we actually find stuff. But still, we still find stuff. No matter how much disc and what's on the discs. So it's really important to do that. So actually, we hope more people will contribute with discs so we can get more preserved. And I hope that they'll take the discs and make sure the releases get online, or get some of the people, because there's several people on CSTB who's really active uploading, and give them access to the discs and let them upload the stuff so they can get the story preserved. It's just important we get it preserved, because one day it's lost. And it's not even the discs that can be lost, it can be the guy who owned them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can vouch for the fact that over the years I've been very fortunate to meet a number of Commodore 64 musicians several of which who are no longer with us. So having some of their stuff archived from old games, etc., or the music archived was really important. So obviously the likes of Ben Daglish, Richard Joseph, and obviously more recently Peter Clark, people who've, made a difference, and having spoken to them all and being able to retrieve some of their stuff has been really important, from a sort of musical archive point of view as well. So I think this is the thing. Now we're all getting old, unfortunately. We can't stop that one. But as you say, I think with some people, being able to archive the stuff before they pass away, and it may be lost forever, is important. And I think as we're all getting older, all I would say to people is if you've got some discs that need archiving, send them your way.
Yeah, please do, because you can get them preserved. And you actually get some people also because of the age. They're returning. Because now they kicked out the kids because they get adults, and now they can have time to do other stuff. And maybe the kids started on the C64 not to do anything, but maybe watch demos. Maybe it's not the real C64, it can be the emulator of one of the machines you can buy to watch it. But they come back, and those people is also important because they have a story and have some stuff to preserve. And the stories is important. Now you mentioned Peter Clark. And actually, Peter and me was speaking a lot on the Discord. And, one of the funny parts was Peter thought I was from the Netherlands, and I said, "No, I'm not from the Netherlands."
Was that on the Seniors channel by any chance?
Well, what?
Was that on one of the Seniors Discord channels, I believe?
Yeah,
I know he used to hang out there, didn't he?
Yeah. And Peter and me was talking about it, and Peter was a little bit fascinated because, well, I like some of the Sid songs. And if you name Peter Clark, what Sid is everyone mentioning? Bubble Bobble. Yeah. But that's not my favorite. And he actually liked what my favorite was Kinetic, the Firebird game. Yeah. And he was like, I think it's special because you like that one. Everyone likes the other one. And we had a lot of talks, and I usually, because of Mr. Methane, don't Google him, I just say it, but Mr. Methane was famous in the UK, in UK Got a Talent, Britain Got a Talent, and I was telling Pete that I think he should start to fart Hotel California. And Pete was like, no, don't do that ever. First of all, it's complicated and it's not healthy for you to do, he was always telling. So we had a lot of fun with Pete, and I really miss Pete, I have to say.
I'll vouch for that, having sort of spoken to him at length over the years, and certainly not just his work as a musician. I mean, Taipan's probably one of my favourites that often gets overlooked as well. The Ocean game based on the James Clavell novel. But also, obviously, his stuff on the remix scene, the fact that he would actually mentor people within the remix scene as well and get them to be good remixers and generally be quite supportive, which is always a good plus. I think if you give something back, I think that's important. It's all very well consuming all the games and all the content and all the demos, but being able to give something back as well, I think, is really important. And obviously, there are many people who do that. And I think that's why generally the C64 demo scene as a whole is generally very friendly. Yeah, there's a bit of friendly rivalry, of course there is, but it's generally a collaborative effort, and I think that generally helps everybody, including your good self, when you're transferring discs, because there is that community, as you say, already there.
And you say the reality is there, but most of it is gone.
Yeah,
as I know, there's some of the nowadays release groups is do the competition, and sometimes that they are long chat on CSDB because they don't agree who released this and who's released that. And but all the other ones who's actually were active in the 80s and 90s and everything is we don't care. We think it was fun to look back at, and we also laugh a little bit about it and talk about it and but it was there. No, for sure it was there, and there was people who was really bad friends. But I have also seen people who never spoke to each other in the 80s and 90s meet nowadays and start talking and getting a beer and talking about the old days. So of course it changed, and I think it's I think it's because many of the people actually it had a lot of influence on their life. I spoke to at the retro console market. I spoke to one of the demo guys there, and he said, "Try to imagine how many hours we used."
This is it, and I think, like you say, I think it's become more friendly. Yeah, there may be still like, oh, this demo group can do this, can you do it? But it's more of a friendly rivalry, almost like a friendly challenge, you know. And certainly that spirit of community is very much alive and well.
Yeah, and if you see now you talk about the musicians, and if you see there's going to be new musicians and new graphians, you actually have a lot of people who started to help them. So what could you do better? And you can try to use this tool, and you can do this, and you can do this. And like you see, then Hex did the sprite demo that everyone was inspired of, and he started to tell everyone that this is how I did it. Instead of in the 80s and 90s, we didn't say anything. It was only the people who could study the code who could find out. And that I actually like. I like the story, and I like the friendship nowadays, because you actually say welcome to new people and to old people again. And the community together. I know sometimes for the old people, it can be a little bit hard going to a party or to a meeting, and there may be one or two that know, or they think they know, because then they start to walk around. I can't remember who I was walking around with the exits many years ago, and I was like, "Well, you remember this guy? That's he was the guy in this." And oh yes, I remember, but he never met him. He only wrote with him on swapping, so he never met the guy, and that's how it was several times. And all those people is actually doing it. I think they're doing it great because they talk to each other, and they're friendly and say welcome to new people, and make sure they get part of the community. Of course, if people act like an ass, they also get kicked away again. But I think that's normal for a community.
Yeah, I mean, with any community, you're always going to get people who are different people. It's just the nature of us being human, you know. But I think certainly now, you know, it's very much of the fact that everyone, you know, is a community generally and works well together. I mean, in terms of any memorable sort of moments from your own point of view, have you got any really great stories from, say, a party that you've been to that stick out in your mind? So say, for example, there was a great moment at X that you've been part of, or any other demo scene event.
My problem was that in the 80s and 90s, I was doing a lot of radio. And that's because I usually say I have 4 big interests. I have IT, I have C64, I have cooking, and I also have radio. And all of them takes a lot of time. And in the 80s and 90s, I didn't have time to go to many parties because I earned money that way. So when I started, I worked on the radios, and I had to work in the holidays and weekends and everything. So I wasn't to many parties. I was to one of the Danish Gold parties. I went with a friend in Commodore. I think it was the one that was my first party, and I didn't know anyone. I was just there, and we just walked around and saw how it is. And he was like, "What is it doing there?" And we were talking, and I was talking a little about cracking and everything. But we was there for short, I remember. And then I have been to a few parties over the years. And then I came back. I started to go to Group Data, TX, and also to Poker Data and some other stuff, and to some of the Danish meetings and Fiona Data. And I really like it because it got cozy. Even X is big. It's a lot of friends, and I know a lot of people. And people is going there to have fun and relax. I know there's the demo combo and someone wants to win, but they all do it for fun. And actually, I really like going to X. And now Pete thought I was from the Netherlands, and I really love the Netherlands. I love the radio. I love the culture, and because of Bordeaux, Tim was living in the Netherlands. Now he doesn't. I was in the Netherlands 3 or 4 times per year. And actually, when I went to X in the old days, I came there a week before. and stayed at Tim's place, and we enjoyed it, relaxed, ate some food, and not like we went to a special restaurant. We could go just have pizza and go have fun. And actually, both of us I have shown him most of Denmark, and he has shown me most of the Netherlands. And we came to X, and I had the possibility those years I could go back to his place and sleep and get a shower and go back again and everything. So we actually had a lot of fun. But X parties I really like. I also like the group data parties we had and the poker datas, but it's because it's a smaller party and there's a lot of friends coming. And,
yeah, I think having friends that you're there at an event like that really is helpful, because the moment you meet them and they're people you have not maybe seen for a while, like you say, it becomes a very relaxed atmosphere straight away, because you're meeting those people and you're actually getting on with them anyway. So I think for me, certainly, I think that sort of relaxed sort of atmos that tends to be present now at a lot of places just makes everyone feel a bit more comfortable, doesn't it?
Yeah, it will. I think it's more comfortable, and the small ones is of course easier because we can do some stuff and we can do some things. It's hard to do things for all 300 people at a party, and actually it's been I'm doing it at poker data, I'm doing it at group data. I actually barbecue cake. It's a tradition, and it actually started. It started at poker data. No, it started at group data, because we found out we could barbecue. So I bought some sausages, and I had sausages with me, and we actually came with the problem that we didn't have any ketchup and anything, but we got it from the others, and we got some barbecue. And then we had got the sausages, and I said, well, we have to get some dessert. And I have been picking up some ice cream, and we had ice cream in the freezer. And then I barbecued the cake, and people was like, what are you doing with the cake? And I'm barbecuing it.
Is this like the Scottish tradition where they deep fry everything, like like they deep fry chocolate, they deep fry pizza? I mean, is this now becoming a tradition that you're going to barbecue a cake whenever you're at an event?
Now, yeah, a little bit. Actually, I have tried the barbecued Mars bar and the Snickers, and that's because I have also been a lot of London. And one of my friends, I asked him, he said, "Don't try it, but if you really want, you have to go to this place, because you can get bad ones and good ones." And actually, I got it from a chef in Denmark, and it's a raspberry roll because it has sugar on it. When you put it on the barbecue, it caramelizes and gets crispy. And the cake usually is crap. It's cheap cake, and it tastes okay. And we got it in the 80s, and it was like a cheap cake because it has to be cheap. In the 80s, there wasn't so much money between people's hands. And as I usually say, if you had to do dessert and you have to do a special dessert, you take that cake and cut it in slices and put it down and put whipped cream on it. And then I found a chef who actually put it on the barbecue. And I met him. And he didn't say, you have to taste it. And I met a lot of people who works with food because I had the big interest in food. Really, really big interest. And people around me, as I usually say, they don't want to go shop with me when it's food because it takes a lot of time. And if you have seen my car, sometimes when going home from the Netherlands, I have a lot of special things I bring home. Not because there's much Dutch stuff that I need. And as you know, in UK, people often talk about that the food is not that good. And that's because it's fish and chips and it's canned peas and everything. And then some people criticize the German food. I think there's inspiring food in all the kitchens. But there's always been said that the food in Netherlands is the worst from UK and Germany. But I still find some interesting things, and I find something I have to try and eat. But I usually have to buy some stuff because they had a lot of colonies. I get a lot from Asia and everything. And that interest actually learned me about the barbecue cake, and we got it on group data, and then we have to do it for some more. And I did it on poker data not this summer, but the year before, and we were doing, of course, outside, and was some Swedish young people was playing football. And when we were done, I had to go home. I was standing barbecuing cake, and he was like, "Are you barbecuing cake?" Yes, I'm barbecuing cake. And actually, it got very popular and very good tradition. And often
I
I
can
have,
imagine. I mean, this is a whole new career for you waiting right there, isn't it? I mean, you said that the chef was being your interest. So
yeah,
if you ever have no dish left to transfer, you know, get out there and start barbecuing things and experimenting. This sounds like a whole new career, right?
yeah. Actually, I was going to be chef, but we didn't do
Yeah.
it because the period when I should choose election, it was a very violent
Yes, you
way
mentioned
to
this
work.
earlier on. So basically, I think in the
Yeah,
UK particularly, chefs were very, very shouty.
yeah,
Even in the 90s and 2000s, you've probably heard of Gordon Ramsay, who's a
yeah,
famous
yeah,
UK chef, and
yeah,
he's very shouty and sweary. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of restaurants, particularly at the high end, still have that very, very much that culture of being very shouty.
yeah. And it changed in Denmark actually because we have a place called Substance, and we have Søllerød Kro, this two of the good places, also got a Michelin star, and they're known for actually being very nice to the people. Actually, if you go to Substance, they have an open kitchen, so you can't shout off the people because all the guests can hear what you say.
Because you can actually see, and also you can see them actually making the food as well,
Yeah, yeah,
which I think for me, as someone who does enjoy the food, is quite nice to see, you know, that open kitchen and see your food being made and the care and attention that's being made into it, which is kind of almost like care and attention that you guys would have to do for transferring. So here's a question for you. If someone is genuinely interested in preservation and they want to learn more about preservation, what would you recommend that they do to start learning?
First of all, there's a lot of tutorials about it, but most important is they're going to transfer disk, get an IC host. I think for the disk originals, they still use the Cureflux for transferring those. I can't remember exactly what it is because that's my friend in Finland. I usually ask about that, but I think they're still using the Cureflux. But actually, if you're doing the nibble now, you can do the nibble with IC host if you got the updated edition. So that's the first step, because you can transfer with anything, but if you don't have an error block, we can't check it. We can't make sure it's correct. And it's fine. You can take a transfer disk and say, well, the game works. Yeah, but in level 9 or in a demo in part 4, there's actually an error, but you can't see it because the error block is missing. And they actually get a demo transfer that is broken in part 4, or a game who's had bad graphics in level 5 or something like that. So get the IC host and make sure to get something that can do the error block. And then start transferring, start reading about it, ask the communities. There's the Demosu guys, there's the transfer team. But most important, have patience. Because when you sit and have to transfer 1,200 disks, you really have to have the patience to say, I want to do it. And if you think you can look at disks and say, I have 2,000 disks, and you transfer 50 of them and say, well, I do 50 another day, it's much better to say, let someone do it for you. But if you want to go for it, I think it will be great to do. But again,
I think that's it, isn't it? It's a learning process all the time. And I'm sure that you guys are still learning some stuff about when you transfer some rare or obscure discs that, you know, every day is a new learning day, right? So you're learning all the time.
yeah, we always learn, and we always learn methods and ways to transfer and how to keep the hardware and what to do, because it's no secret I have killed several disk drives. That should be no secret because I have transferred so many disks. But it's still important that we're doing it correctly and learn every day.
every day is a school day. I mean, I've seen that from some of the SID musicians discs that have backed up and archived and managed to get SID tunes out of back in the day, back in the days when I was doing HVSC full time, that, you know, it's their work. You really want to do them the honor and preserve it properly and liaise with them and work with them and get the stuff out there, provided they're happy with it. I remember, I've got a good story that I can share back with you. I remember Fred Gray supplying a disc to me which had a tune that was basically unfinished but crashed on looping or whatever. And the challenge to me was, you make it loop properly, I'll let you release it in HVSC. What an incentive, right? Managed to fix it. He was happy. He gave me the okay to release it. That was a really good moment, you know. And I think from your point of view, when you've talked about some of the transfer stories that you've had, that's that immense sense of being able to give something back must make you really proud, right?
Yeah, you get happy when you make people happy. That's the most important in this. Some people are really getting happy because they actually get their old stuff preserved, and it's a big part of their life. And now you say if people have some SIDs on discs that haven't got transferred. Well, if you don't have a way to transfer it, and it's outside UK, because I guess you will have them in UK, you can also help doing that. It's just say, well, I have my 10 music discs. Can you transfer those and give to you as an example, or give them back and they can give them to you? It's not a question of what we're transferring. It's a question about that we get it preserved and people actually get happy seeing their stuff again.
Absolutely. And I think certainly from all the demos that you've managed to preserve over the years and get some of those out there, provided people are happy with it. I think that, like you say, there's immense satisfaction of being able to not just have that archive preserved, but also, you know, for those who have sent it those discs to enjoy in future as well.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's I won't. Some people say it's selfish, but I don't think it is. I know some people will be happy to see their things back because they used a lot of time doing it, and they used a lot of time swapping with people. They used a lot of time working on the computer. Probably also use some time of expensive phone bills, talking to friends, and stamps and everything. And it's just important that we make sure that people get what they need. And if it's a part of the story we can share, make them be able to share, it would be perfect.
Absolutely. So if there are people who generally want to get hold of the transfer team, if they have some discs they want preserving, or they want to, you know, start learning and helping you out, how can they get hold of you guys? Where do they need to go?
Of course, you can find us on CSDB. We are also on many of the C64 groups on Facebook, and some people can find c64heaven.com and write me a mail. And I would say, if you mention you have disc, I'm sure people should be able to pick it up and say, get in contact with the transfer team. And like we have in Germany, we have as a child who have transferred a lot of discs for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. And this he's doing a great job, and that's because people say, "Oh, I have no problem sending them inside Germany," as example. But you have to tell people that they have to do it, and they have to say, "Oh, you have to contact this guy or that guy, or you have to do it this way." It's just important that they tell if they want to get them transferred, because we can always find people who can help us. And if it's in a location where we ain't and we're not happy to send them, we can find people who want to help the community. Again, with the respect for the owner. That's the most important for us, that you respect the owner, what they want with the discs.
Always. I mean, and that's a really important point. And I think those that do want to contact you for transfers, I'll back you up on this. I'll basically say, you know, these guys look after it, they'll preserve it, they'll only release it if you give them the go ahead. So, you know, by all means, if you're watching this and you have some discs that need archiving, I would say please get in touch with the transfer team via what Mason's just said there. Make sure you get hold of them and they'll archive your stuff for you and do the great job that you are doing.
Exactly. And also the point about not just spreading it is that there can be a special story to something on the discs. If you have a demo and you want to put on CSTB yourself because you want to put some story in the summaries or tell something special about it, like we did this demo, I did it at my friend's place, and this was this guy, sadly he isn't here anymore, or I haven't seen him for many years, but this is a big memory for us. It's a little bit sad if we don't respect it, because if they want to do it, they should do it themselves. It's so important for telling the story. There's also people who doesn't care and say, I don't care what's on the discs. It's so many years ago. I really don't care. But then we ask them to upload it on CSTB in a movers thread, because then they can get access, or can get access to it and upload it to CSTB. And there's nothing saying that we have to upload it. It's the community, C64 community, who had to supply, like CSTB. So it's also important that if there's disks they have access to, and instead of saying, well, I think I don't want to use my time on it, well, if you don't want to use your own time, let others do it. There will always be people who will be able to help you to get the story preserved. And if you got your own discs and you have 2 boxes with personal stuff and a half box with coding discs you don't want to spread, you can just spread the rest. That's your own decision. Just we have a big community to help and do it. And I really hope people will do it.
I would completely agree. So just to wrap one final thing, are there any special people that you want to thank over the years for their support, their kindness, their help with preservation that you think deserve a bit of a heads up?
I would say thanks to everyone who have supported this. I couldn't mention special names, but I know I will forget people. But I was, of course, thanks the transfer team, because they really did a great job. But also all the people who just work on this community. I have to pick out one person, and that's because he isn't here anymore, Derbyshire Ram. Derbyshire Ram was really helpful. He also helped with context to other people. His actually, I was a really close friend in the 80s and 90s, and he did an amazing job. And condition wasn't very good at the end, but he transferred so much he could do. And that was, I was really happy when he did it for me. And he transferred the discs, and he said, I hope they work. I don't think I will be able to retransfer them if there are errors. And that was because it was close to the end. So I have to mention him, but of course I have so many people I could mention. Friends at parties, friends that have supported it, friends we have made fun with. We usually have a lot of fun. Like our good data, Scooby was sleeping with the Swedes and was snoring. So he went into our Danes where we slept because he was more quietly. And some people have seen it. If they have seen a party where we don't have a bed, like we have an X, I have my big air bed with me. And people are surprised that I can fill the whole air bed sleeping. And I sleep like a baby when it's there. And there can be noise and everything. But everyone has seen it if they have been at a party where we bought the air beds. I usually have my huge airbed for 2 people, and I fill the whole airbed. So
you are the starfish, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say those special people is everyone, because everyone contributes to anything. It can be a small story. it can be just had a great talk. So for me, it's more special. I have spoken to old seniors at X, where I was like, "Oh, I know who you are." I was like, "Do you know me?" "Yeah, I know you was in this group and this group." And that's really surprised. I can say I'm a little bit lucky because I see a lot of releases and see a lot of things get uploaded to CSDB because I keep an eye to what's get uploaded at CSDB, especially for the cracks. So of course I see all the things, and if I see the names, I will say, I remember you, and you did this, you and this. Of course, I have a big knowledge for the games, but I also have some knowledge for demos and the other stuff. But the games has always been my part, you can say.
Absolutely. Well, folks, I think that's about wrapped it up. But I was going to say much thanks to Mason of the transfer team for your time. Much appreciated. And for everyone else watching, enjoy the rest of Transmission 64. And remember, keep it Commodore.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone, and thanks I could attend to Transmission 64, and especially thanks to the Padua guys to make this available.
Thank you.